Hello, today we're going to be doing animal tissues and organ systems. We're going to be going through all the different types of tissues within the animal kingdom, and then also talking about the basic organ systems for our human body. So this is kind of our intro into the anatomy section that we'll be going over shortly. So, with this, our first type of tissues are the epithelial tissues. All right, and epithelial tissues arise from the ectoderm, the very outside layer of the organism. All right, the epithelium are a sheet-like tissue of cells that are close together and that have very little extracellular material. So basically, they're packed in very tightly. A lot of times, they prevent things from coming inside the body. So they're used as a barrier with the body. Typically, they have one exposed side to the outside. Put that in quotation marks, and then anchored on the other side, and they're typically connected via adhesion proteins, so basically seal them up. So they're basically the barriers between your internal body and the rest of the outside world. Now, the rest of the outside world is a little bit of a misnomer because you can also include the inside of your stomach and the inside of your intestines in that category. So anything that can come into your body goes through your mouth and into your stomach and intestines, that's still technically accessible from the outside. So that's also part of your epithelial tissue. So the linings of like your stomach and your intestines are part of this epithelial tissue, as well as basically your skin. Let's see, most have squamous, cuboidal, or columnar shapes. So the largest majority have these three shapes. You need to know these three. You need to know what squamous is, cuboidal, and columnar. You can see the nice little pictures over there on the right. Squamous are flattened like cells. Cuboidal tend to have a cube shape, a round shape. And then columnar are tall and skinny. Squamous are like in your skin, cuboidal found like in your lungs, and then the columnar found like in your small intestines. They're found all over the different place. These guys can be very specialized for absorption and secretion of different things. So your skin secretes out sweat and all kinds of things like that. Your stomach can secrete out, and digestive enzymes, or there's a whole bunch of different things that can go along here. All right, so epithelial tissues can be very specialized as far as absorption of nutrients or secretion of some kind of product. Glandular tissue is part of this epithelium. All right, glandular tissue are cells that are only found in the epithelium. They secrete out some kind of product that are used elsewhere. All right, so they create something that is used somewhere else inside the body, and they're typically unrelated to the gland cell metabolism. So the actual function of that particular cell, they're basically making something for the entire body. So they have a larger function there. And glands are those sac-like secretory organs that are concentrated with gland cells. Basically, you have exocrine glands and endocrine glands. Exocrine glands have some kind of tube or duct that they secrete something through. So this includes your mucus, saliva, your tears, your tear ducts, your milk, enzymes, all those different types of things are all produced through ducts. Whereas the endocrine glands just kind of let them diffuse throughout through the cell and through the cell membrane into the tissues around them. Right, so there's no direct secretory duct or anything, but they just kind of release it. And these are typically your hormones. So they create the hormones and they release them from the cell membrane out into the surrounding areas, and then they go from there. And they can release them into the bloodstream so that they're carried throughout the entire body, or can release them directly into the areas around them to signal cells that are directly in contact with them. And we have three types of cell junctions. I promise you these will be on your quiz and on your test. All right, so you need to know these three, and you need to know the differences, and you need to know examples of these. The first one is an adhering junction. All right, when you use an adhesive, you're sticking stuff together. So basically, adhering junctions are locking cells together. So they adhere these two cells together to seal them up. And basically what this does is it locks them together so that they have an extra strong bond between them so they don't pull apart. One of the best examples of this are the cells within your heart. So your cardiac muscle cells have an adhering junction that connects those two types of cells and prevents them from separating. So your heart is constantly contracting, constantly beating, and this constant wear and tear on the body. If these didn't have these special junctions that sealed up and held together, those cells could easily start to wear apart, and then you get this fraying of the tissues. And you don't want that to happen to your heart. So you have these special adhering junctions that lock those heart cells together and make it so that your heart stays intact and doesn't wear and tear down and break apart. Then you have tight junctions. Tight junctions are all about basically preventing something from going across a membrane or a tissue. All right, so these basically are tissues that are designed to kind of separate out something Like in your stomach, you want to separate out your stomach from the outside of your stomach so that all the digestive enzymes and all of the hydrochloric acid that's inside your stomach doesn't make it out into your body. So you have a tight junction that seals up the cells and basically prevents anything from being able to fit in between the cells. If anything's going to move, it has to go literally through those cells in order to get to the other side. And so this basically allows those cells to control what's being absorbed and what's not being absorbed, and make it so that nothing can leak across that tissue. So this is very important for things like your stomach, your blood-brain barrier, things like that. And then lastly, the last type of junction is called a gap junction. This is basically a channel or a bridge in between cells that allow them to communicate with each other very freely. Right? It acts as an open communication channel, allows nutrients to pass back and forth, but also allows hormones and other kinds of signaling to travel between these different types of tissues. And this one also, one of the best examples is within the heart. So the heart has the adhering junction, but it also has the gap junctions. If there's a really cool YouTube video that shows two different heart cells beating, and they're beating at different rhythms. And then they take a little probe and they start pushing them closer and closer together, and as soon as they touch, they start synchronizing and beating all together. And that's because they link up these gap junctions, and when one beats, it automatically triggers the other one to beat, and so they function and they pump at the exact same time. And this is why your heart's able to contract all together and get the most out of that contraction, is because they have these gap junctions in between the cells. So when one gets signal to contract, they all contract after that, because that signal propagates through all those tissues, through that entire tissue, through those gap junctions. Right? So those are your three types of junctions. Your adhering junctions, which seal things together, make sure that they don't tear apart. Tight junctions, which make sure nothing goes across that tissue. And then gap junctions, which allow those tissues to communicate with each other. And there's a picture, kind of a diagram of how those gap junctions work and how those channels are in between those two different cells. Right, so done with our epithelial tissues. Now we go to our soft connective tissues. All right, so we have these connective tissues that are help to hold things together. And from these soft connective tissues, we have several different types. We have loose connective tissue, we have fibrous irregular connective tissue, and we have fibrous regular connective tissue. All right, so loose connective tissue has cells called fibroblasts and fibers, and they're dispersed widely through a matrix, so they're kind of sparse. All right, so you got a couple of cells here, a couple of cells there, and you got a couple of fibers here and a couple of fibers there. It's not super strong, it's not super packed in. It's just kind of this willy-nilly light matrix that helps to hold and provide support for different types of things, like your organs inside your body. It helps hold your stomach and your intestines and your heart and your lungs all in the correct place. So it helps kind of support all those tissues inside your body. Your fibrous irregular connective tissue is much more packed, much more dense. It has fibers going in all kinds of different orientations and different directions, and it makes it so that it's very strong in comparison to loose connective tissue, but it's very strong in lots of different directions. So you can pull it one way or pull it another, and it's a very important component of skin. It helps to basically hold your skin onto your body. This is why you can pinch your skin and you don't get a big chunk of skin in your fingers. Right? It helps seal it and hold it and connect it to all the tissues underneath and provide it so that you can pull it in lots of different directions and it doesn't rip and tear very easily at all. And then our last type of connective tissue is our fibrous regular connective tissue. And our fibrous regular connective tissue is very orderly. You have these rows and rows of fibroblasts and the parallel fibers. So everything's moving in one direction. Everything's in line with each other. And what this does is it provides an extreme amount of strength in one direction, but makes it very weak in any other direction. So these are going to be your tendons and your ligaments. They provide a massive amount of strength, holding your bones and your muscles together in one direction, allowing for massive force, so that you can have people like the bodybuilders and stuff that can lift thousands of pounds. Allows for that strength to allow those muscles to pull without tearing that connective tissue. But if you get any kind of pressure from the different direction, let's say from the side, like the ones in your knee, if all of a sudden you get pressure from the side of your knee, those tendons and those ligaments tend to tear, and that's how you get ACL tears and LCL tears. All right, so this is why you can get ligaments and tendon tears so easily, is because they have a lot of strength in one direction, but coming from the side direction, they're very brittle and very easy to tear into. And so it makes them very weak from that kind of direction. But this is your fibrous regular connective tissue. Right. Then we have our specialized connective tissues. These tissues have very specific functions that are quite different from our other types of loose connective tissues and all of those types of things. These are found in very specific locations within the body and do very specific functions. Okay? So unlike this unspecialized cells, these guys have, for our cartilage, it has no blood vessels attachment to it. Cartilage is made out of a rubbery material, so it doesn't have all the same types of fibers inside of it. The only way it can get any kind of nutrients is through diffusion, and very few cells divide within these tissues, so you don't get a whole lot of growth, especially within cartilage tissues. So cartilage tissue is very tough, very firm, but doesn't repair very easily. So actually, if you get a cartilage tear anywhere within your body, it takes much, much longer time than it does actually for bone to repair. But this is a type of specialized connective tissue that's designed to coat over and provide protection within your body. Bone also is a specialized connective tissue, right? But it has lots and lots of different vessels within it. It has lots of different cells within it, and they're all kind of the cells basically create like a prison around themselves. They basically lock themselves inside your bone and provide themselves the ability to add calcium into your bone, making it harder, or to take it out in case your body needs it for something. And so it allows your bone to be a storage for that kind of calcium. And also, all the blood supply and everything allows them to heal up bone much, much, much faster than a lot of tissues within your body. Bone actually, for most times you break a bone, most of the time that bone is healed up enough for you to utilize that particular bone, again, within about 2 to 3 weeks. We generally make you keep a cast on for 8 weeks so that it becomes really hard and you don't do something stupid and break it again. But it actually is functional typically within about 2 to 3 weeks, unless you're talking about a very large bone like the femur. But bones help provide support. They interact with the muscle. They provide protection for all your soft organs, and they heal and repair themselves very, very easily. There's a nice little picture. You can see where the blood vessels are running all the way through that bone there. Our next type of specialized connective tissue is adipose tissue. And adipose tissue is an energy reserve for the body. So it's the tissues that are designed just to hold in fat and basically store energy for the rest of your body. So they have fat droplets form as excess carbohydrates and lipids inside of your tissues and converted directly to fats inside of your adipose tissue. And you don't gain adipose cells. So as if someone were to gain weight, they don't have more adipose cells than someone who's thinner or back before they gained weight. They have the same number of adipose tissue cells. What's happened is those cells have actually expanded and packed full even more with the fat that's stored within them. So your cells just get bigger. They don't actually you don't actually get any more adipose tissue cells. Your cells just happen to get bigger. And so adipose tissue has very little extracellular matrix, but has a lot of blood vessels going to it that allows it to dump out energy into the body when needed, or take up that energy and store it inside the fat when needed. A lot of it accumulates around organs like your kidneys and your hearts, which is not necessarily a good thing. And here's a picture of adipose tissue. You can see how they're almost completely clear in the center. That's because of all the fat that's stored inside. It's pushed all the organelles all to the outside edge. So you might see some dark lines around the outside, some dark little clumps right around the outside of the cell, and that might be the nucleus or the mitochondria or something along those lines. Right? So everything's kind of packed, it's pushed all the way out to the outside edges of the cell membrane, and whereas the entire inside of the cell is just simply packed full of fat. So that's your adipose tissue. Blood is also considered to be a connective tissue, and that's because it comes from stem cells within your bone. So it comes from your bone marrow. And so since it comes from the same stem cells as your bone does, then it's considered in that specialized connective tissue. And if you think about it by the definition of connective tissue, it follows along the same guidelines. So it is cells within some kind of a matrix. Well, the cells are your white blood cells and your red blood cells and your platelets, and the matrix is the plasma. All right, so the red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets suspended in the plasma still follows along that same idea of connective tissues, even though it's more flowy, let's say, than our cartilage and our epithelial tissues. So the red blood cells help carry the oxygen, the white blood cells help defend and repair the tissues, and platelets help with clotting. So those are our three main cells within there. So your red blood cells actually, as they become mature, drop off their nucleus. They basically just become giant sacks of hemoglobin. Your white blood cells you have multiple different types floating within your blood. They help to fight off infections. And then platelets are actually pieces of very large, much larger cells that have broken apart, and they go around inside your blood, ready to help clot if there's any kind of damage within your blood tissue. All right, we have our muscle tissues. Our muscle tissues have arrangements in parallel with one another. All right, so they basically all run together in one direction. There's 3 different types of muscle tissue. There's smooth muscle, there's striated muscle, which is like muscular, like skeletal muscle, and then there's cardiac muscle. All right, and we're going to talk about each one of those guys. All right, so for skeletal muscle, look at a lovely picture there. Basically, skeletal muscle is all about moving your bone and cartilage within your body. So it helps to maintain the position of the body, and they're very easy to identify. They're typically long cylinder-like shapes. They have multiple nuclei inside of them. They're typically one right after another. They kind of stack in these parallel arrays that all run with each other, so that way they provide a strength, and when they contract, they all contract in one direction, working together. And so this is what makes your muscles. So you have these multinucleated cells, and they run the entire length of the muscle. So one cell will run from one end all the way to the other. It has all these little lines going in, and those little lines are those areas where it contracts. And so you'll have one little contractile unit next to another, and even though these little units might only contract a teeny tiny bit, you start putting thousands and thousands of them in a row, and it can make that muscle actually contract down a lot. And so that's where we can get all the movement that we have. And those cells are called myofibrils also, those long strands of those muscle fibers as they bunch up. And this is the only voluntary muscle within your body, so it's the only one that you actually have control of. And so this is kind of what they look like on how they're arranged within the muscles of your body. You got the one little myofibril that runs, and it's packed into a group. And then those are packed into groups of muscle cells, and those are packed into muscle bundles, which are packed into larger muscle cells in their sheath, and are punched, and then make up the entire larger muscle that runs from one bone to another. Cardiac muscle tissue is only found in the heart. It's also striated, so it's got these little light and dark strands, these little light and dark lines going the entire length of the muscle, but it's branching. It can have lots of branches going here and there, and it only has one nucleus, so it's not multinucleated like the skeletal muscle. All right? So cardiac muscle has adhering junctions that hold them together, called intercalated discs that we'll show in here in a second. They have those gap junctions also that allow the signals to pass between them. And they look like that picture at the bottom right. In the bottom left, you got the picture of open heart surgery. And then at the bottom right, you can actually see the tissues. So you see how there's the length of the cell. See those darker lines every once in a while? Those darker lines that you see every so often are called intercalated discs. You need to make sure you know this. All right, intercalated discs are those adhering junctions. Those are those areas that seal and that glue those cells together to keep them from pulling apart. And so you'll see that there's light, dark bands, but then every so often you get a really dark band, and that's that adhering junction, that intercalated disc that helps seal up those cardiac muscles and helps hold them together. All right? And they'll only have one nucleus per cell, and you can see that they can branch and kind of go in several different directions. Last type of muscle is our smooth muscle. And smooth muscle is very different from the other two. It does not have those light and dark bands. All right, it's unbranching. It's tapered at both ends. It looks smooth and flowy in comparison to the other two types of muscles. It's typically unorganized as far as contractile units go, so it contracts in a whole bunch of kind of different areas and different arrangements. The key part to smooth muscle is that they can contract for an extremely long period of time, and they basically never tire. And this is a very important thing to have happen, because smooth muscle makes up your arteries. All right, and your arteries are basically the smooth muscle within your arteries help to maintain your blood pressure, allowing the blood to flow up against gravity and into your head and into your brain, providing your brain with blood. If these muscles, if this smooth muscle actually got tired and relaxed all of a sudden, the blood wouldn't make it to your brain, and you'd basically drop and pass out every so often. So that would be a real problem. So it's very important for these smooth muscles to be able to maintain their constant contraction and never tire out. And that's the big deal with these guys. So smooth muscle is found as you're swallowing. It's found with your stomach and your intestines grinding. But it's also found in your smooth muscle of your arteries and things like that. So they're a very important type of muscle that is a slow contraction, allowing for the grinding of the stomach, or also for maintaining that contraction for a very long period of time, like found in your arteries. And this is a picture of it. You can see how there's no little striation lines anymore. It's all kind of flowy and smooth. Still one nucleus per cell, kind of tapered on the ends though. Now, our last type of tissue, I believe, is our nervous tissue. All right, our nervous tissue is made up of two different types of cells, neurons and neural glial cells. We will have an entire section on this talking about these guys. The neurons are the specific cells that are designed to carry signals. Right? They're the excitable cells that help with communication. And they are basically the princesses of your body. Right? They do that, and they focus on that, and they're very good at it, but that's basically all that they do. And then they need the neuroglial cells to help support and provide them with all kinds of other structural and functional help. Right? So the neuroglial cells, you have several different types. Some of them provide support and protection to make them so that they are not so delicate. Some of them actually help clean and take care of and feed the neurons. Some of them are specifically there to help prevent any kind of infection or anything bothering the neurons. You have all different types of cells, all of them designed just to take care of these neurons that basically can't do anything other than their one function, which is very, very important for your body. So that's probably a good thing. But we'll talk about this much more in depth. And so those neurons propagate signals down their axon. You got a nice little picture of one over there. You have 3 different types of neurons within your body. You have inner neurons, which allow for connections. You have sensory neurons that receive signals, and you have motor neurons that send signals out. So those are our different types that we have. Now, your last part of this is our introduction into anatomy. All right, so this is going to be all the different body systems. This should be kind of a review for you, as far as at least 90% of it should be stuff that you already know. You're going to need to know the different systems and what their basic functions are, and some examples of organs within those systems. All right, so your first example is the integumentary system. So it helps to protect the body from injury, helps to prevent it from dehydrating, and also helps protect against pathogens. Right? It helps to control temperature. It helps with excreting certain wastes. If you've ever known anybody who's had way too much to drink, when they get up the next morning, they can just reek and smell of alcohol because your skin is literally excreting it into the surroundings, so you can literally smell it on them. And the skin is also there to receive external stimuli, signals from what's going on outside and around you. So it has a lot of function, and the main part of it is the skin. All right, so your integumentary system is basically your skin, and so make sure you know those functions and the examples. Your next one is the nervous system, which includes your brain and your spinal cord, and then all the nerves that integrate and correlate with those. It helps to detect external and internal stimuli, helps to control and coordinate different responses, and it integrates all the other systems within the body to make sure that everything's working together and help with that idea of homeostasis. Muscular system includes all the different muscles in your body, moves the body and its internal parts, helps to maintain your posture so you can stand upright, and when you start getting too cold, it helps to generate heat by shivering. Skeletal system is all your bones there, supports and protects your body parts, like your skull protecting your brain and your ribs protecting your heart and your lungs. Provides muscle attachment so that you can move. Produces those red blood cells and white blood cells, and then helps to store calcium and phosphorus in case your body needs it. Circulatory system is all about rapidly transporting things throughout your body. So picking up oxygen, taking it to your tissues, picking up the carbon dioxide and bringing it back so it can be exhaled. Dropping off nutrients to the tissues and picking up waste products, carrying around hormones, stabilizing internal pH and body temperature, all those types of things. So circulatory system is very important. So this includes all your arteries, your veins, your capillaries, and your heart. The endocrine system is all about hormone control. So basically it works with the nervous system to integrate short-term and long-term activities, helps to coordinate your growth, your development throughout your entire life cycle, helps to coordinate with homeostasis and a bunch of different activities inside your body as far as how you react, how much you should pee, all that kind of good stuff. And basically all the glands working together to maintain your body and to allow it to grow and function the way it's supposed to. The lymphatic system is all about your lymph vessels, right? And so this is the one that most people probably don't know, and you probably need to focus the most on. So it collects and returns some tissue fluid to the bloodstream. So basically, as your blood is carrying the liquid and carrying the nutrients to your tissues, it oozes out, but not all of that plasma that leaves the blood vessels ends up making it back into the blood vessels. And so you get about 10% left behind inside the tissues, and that's what the lymph system is there for, is to help pick up that extra 10% of that liquid that's left behind and make sure that it makes it back into the bloodstream. Also within this system are little nodes and basically little apartment complexes almost for your immune system. So you have lots of immune cells that store and live inside the lymph nodes of your lymph system. And these basically, as the fluid is picked back up from your tissues, it flows through these lymph vessels, and if anything is not supposed to be there, like any type of infection, it'll be picked up within these tissues and go directly to these lymph nodes and allow the immune system to be able to respond to it. And so it's a great place for the immune system to kind of hide out and be able to detect any kind of invasion that might be coming to your body, getting you sick. This is also why whenever you go to the doctor and you're telling him you're not feeling well, one of the first things he does is he feels underneath of your chin, right next to your neck, for the lymph nodes that are in that location. Because if they're swollen, that means you're producing lots of white blood cells and you're fighting off some kind of infection. So if they're big and swollen, then it gives him an idea that that your body is fighting something off. And so it helps him kind of determine what's happening with your body. Respiratory system is all about picking up the oxygen and putting it inside your bloodstream, and then getting that carbon dioxide and exhaling it out of your bloodstream. So it helps to regulate the pH also by doing this, removes that waste product of carbon dioxide, and provides your tissues with oxygen. And it includes your lungs, your pharynx, your bronchi, all that good stuff. Digestive system ingests food and water, mechanically and chemically breaks down all that food, and absorbs the small particles and molecules that are within that food. And then lastly, you eliminate the residues or the leftovers. It includes your stomach, your liver, your intestines, your gallbladder, all that good stuff. Pancreas, spleen. Your urinary system helps to maintain the volume and composition of the internal environment of your body, including your blood. So if you drink a whole lot, your blood volume increases, your blood pressure increases, and it causes your urinary system to get rid of some of that water. And vice versa, if you take in more salts, then you'll keep more water inside your body to help balance that out. And it helps excrete fluid and bloodborne waste that happen to build up. And I got a lovely little video, or a lovely little cartoon there for you. And then lastly is your reproductive system. Yet your hormones affect all the other organ systems and affect your whether you're male or female differently. You produce eggs or sperm if you're male or female, and all helps with that whole reproductive part. All right, so that is your tissues and organ system. So make sure you look over that, get prepared, and good luck.